during every playoff game, I've always kept score.
Oh, nice.
And my kids, if I was in the middle of working, my kids would keep the book for me because I taught them how to keep score. And so I have these great memories. I have a scorebook from every single playoff from 2010, 2012, and 2014 that shows every pitch. And,
did you bother in 2016?
Yes, I did.
That was San Francisco Giants Executive Vice President of Communications, Staci Slaughter. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, we bring you bartenders, musicians, photographers, and other San Franciscans talking about living, working, and doing their thing here. It's a way to get to know your neighbors. Welcome to episode 44, part 2. In this podcast, Staci talks about the opening of PacBell Park, as it was known back in 2000. The ballpark is in its 19th season now, and has already hosted an All-Star Game and 4 World Series. Here's Staci.
So 97, that was definitely one of my favorite. I think building the ballpark, you only get so many opportunities to be a part of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And being there kind of early on, not necessarily at the minute they planned the ballpark, but from the campaign all the way through to the dedication of Willie Mays Plaza in 2000, that for me has been just an incredible journey. And to be here when we broke ground, and then to see home plate, because when you may not know this, but when you build a ballpark, the very first thing they put in is home plate, because from that everything else gets anchored. Right. And then I remember before we had our first regular season game, we did a couple exhibition games just to kind of work out the kinks, and it's kind of common with new facilities. So we had, I guess it was the Brewers in town. And I remember we had dedicated Willie Mays Plaza that day, and we had a big party for Willie, and we unveiled the Willie Mays statue. And I was pregnant with my first child, so I went home to take a rest, and then I was coming back to the ballpark because I knew it was going to be a late night. And I stepped foot into the ballpark, and I looked and there were 40,000 people in the ballpark. Now, keep in mind, for 2.5 years, I've been walking around a ballpark where there would be construction workers, but not a full house. And we all kind of looked around like, who are all these people at our ballpark? And it was and there were so many, the scoreboard wasn't working. It was dusty. There were all these things. And we had this kind of post-game meeting with Larry Baer and all the other executives, and we sat around and said, okay, what are all the things that we need to fix before we open the ballpark in a couple of weeks? Fortunately, we had a 2-week road trip before we opened. We put up signs that said, pardon our dust while we, prepare for the grand opening. And then the next night, the Yankees came into town, and it just happened to be one of those beautiful, warm spring days in San Francisco. But that was a pretty magical time just to kind of see all the plans actually become a reality. And I think for the fans and really for the organization, the design, we had seen the pretty pictures, we had seen the renderings, we had seen the designs, but then to see that finished product, and it really exceeded all of our expectations.
Right.
And to see the players when they first walked to the field, they're like, oh my God. We had this day where we had Barry Bonds come out to see the park, and we hadn't put the turf in or anything, and the field was in place, but there was no grass, it was just dirt. And we had batting practice, and it was just kind of a fun activity. And there were all these construction workers out there with their hard hats and their baseball gloves, and they were just catching BP or catching fly balls while the players were taking BP.
Was that Bonds' first time to come here and hit?
He had come, definitely first time to hit. We had him on the groundbreaking when there were still warehouses. We had him on top of a warehouse for the final, so we kind of turned the shovel, of dirt over with Willie, and we announced that day that it was going to be 24 Willie Mays Plaza, and then we had Bonds and Sean Estes go to the top of this warehouse that was along the waterfront, and we had Sean pitch to Bonds. They were both in a suit, and Barry hit the very first splash hit.
Nice.
But in terms of actually coming and taking BP on a dirt field,
I love that visual of the guys out there in hard hats with gloves.
They were falling all over each other. They were so happy, and then we had another day when the first day that we brought the sod in, the grass was being grown in the Delta, and it was coming in on these flatbed trucks, and then they roll out the sod. So everything we did here was a media event because people were so excited about the first seat, the first this. So we said, okay, we're going to roll out the first, roll of grass. Well, we get all the media out here, and there's an overturned truck on one of the highways. And so the sod delivery is probably 4 hours delayed. So I said to Larry, give me your credit card. I'm ordering pizza. Let's feed the media. And so we had a big pizza party. And then finally the truck showed up, and they rolled out the first grass. And then they continued, to roll out the grass. And it was literally like we had people watching grass grow here. But it was the excitement in the community and the media. They were so excited because this has been, it had been since the 1960s, they were trying to come up with a ballpark solution, right? Because they figured once they realized Candlestick was untenable, it just took a long time to be built. So.
Yeah, and here it is actually coming together.
Exactly. It's interesting to kind of see over the decades the evolution of the team. And, we've been to 4 World Series as long as I've been with the team, and 2 before that. And, everyone has its own set of memories and moments. I think, obviously winning our very first World Series for the fans, and we were on the road every time we clinched a playoff round. And so we felt like we were in a bubble because I was traveling with the team, and you didn't really know what was going on in San Francisco. Like when we clinched against the Phillies in 2010 during the NLCS, we had no idea there was a party going on in San Francisco because we literally were at the ballpark and everyone's booing us in Philly because those fans are oh so lovely, and we had a little celebration in our clubhouse, and then we went back to the hotel and there was a celebration there. But then everyone got up in the morning, we got on a plane and we flew home, and you saw just the outpouring of fans when we got back to the ballpark, and it was just this huge party. And the same thing when we won the World Series in Texas, we had no idea what was going on in San Francisco. People would send us photos and stuff, but we were completely in the dark. And so on the day of the parade, when we had all been up for 48 hours planning the parade and figuring out what we needed to do in the program and everything, and to be right on Montgomery Street at the start of the parade and to see the fans and 1 million fans come out in force, I think that is the moment where so many of us got really emotional, and our players and our because all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, now I get it, because we had been in this bubble for a second, every single time except for when we clinched here for the NLCS, both during that really crazy rainy day in
Scutaro
in 2012, and then again in 2014 when Ishikawa. But that very first World Series, I think, is so special for the fans, and I think for our organization too, because it really put us on the map as an organization. But then we were able to take the trophy on a tour.
In 2010?
In 2010. Well, after the 2010 season, in January, we launched a 30-city trophy tour. We did it in subsequent years, too. Yeah. And just to see the generations of fans come and pay tribute to the trophy. We took the trophy to New York, and when we were planning that, we had no idea what to expect. We're like, will anybody show up? I mean, we had a little fan club back there, but we had no idea. And so we asked Willie Mays to come with us, and Buster Posey was getting the Rookie of the Year. So we all en masse went back to New York. We had 5,000 people show up in the middle of Manhattan on a rainy, cold Saturday to see the trophy. Yep. And people were bringing their parents' old baseball hats and putting them next to the trophy and taking a picture.
Who were Giants fans.
Who had grown up Giants fans because of their parents. Mm-hmm. So it was that generational thing, I think, is so special. And to see, I always joke with my kids now because they have grown up in this ridiculous era of sports in the Bay Area.
Speaking of bubbles.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, they never went to Candlestick Park because they were born right when the, and they were too young to remember the 2002 heartbreak. And so, they were at the perfect age for 2010, 12, and 14. And then to see the Warriors having their success and throw in a 49ers, Super Bowl, and there was a Stanley Cup with it. I mean, I'm like, you guys don't realize,
the drought.
The drought.
Yeah, there were drought.
At least they follow Cal football, so at least that's good. So, but it's, to see that this next generation of fans is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to circling full circle, when I, during every playoff game, I've always kept score.
Oh, nice.
And my kids, if I was in the middle of working, my kids would keep the book for me because I taught them how to keep score. And so I have these great memories. I have a scorebook from every single playoff from 2010, 2012, and 2014
nice.
that shows kind of every pitch. And
did you bother in 2016?
Yes, I did.
I mean, I'm still bitter about that, but that was an amazing.
That was a
the
hard
wild
break.
card, and then
it was so incredible, and like we could have easily won one of those games in Chicago, and then just because I think everyone was like, okay, we're gonna win, game 4, and then we're gonna go to Chicago, and we're gonna, and it's gonna be a duel between Johnny Cueto and then all of a sudden it just unravels. Yeah. And my Larry Bear, it was Kol Nidre. And so it was Yom Kippur the next day. So Larry was in synagogue. Oh. He had no idea what had happened.
Do you blame him then?
Yeah. He had gone into synagogue at 8 o'clock. He was like, okay, we're up we're 5 runs. We're going to be fine, And then he turned off his phone. And then sure enough, as he's walking out of synagogue, someone who had not turned off his phone told him, said, I'm really sorry. And Larry's like, what happened? And he called me. He's like, what happened? Yeah. I'm like, it just imploded.
I was here for game 3, which was that miraculous.
So exciting. Yeah.
It's the first time and still the only time that I've walked out of a game. I lost my voice.
Yeah, that was such a great game.
That was incredible, and it felt like when Game 4 started, that momentum from Game
shifted.
3, and it just. And I remember reading or seeing a quote from Joe Madden saying he didn't want to go back to Chicago to face Cueto.
He did not want to face Cueto. And you do, like, you have that momentum. I mean, it's like in 2012 when we went to Cincinnati down 0-2, and we were all getting on the bus going, oh my God, why are we doing this? Is just not going to happen. And I
remember a lot of at least we have 2010.
Yeah, exactly.
That feeling.
Yeah, and people are like, hey, we went to the playoffs, good season, but then these expectations continue to get raised, and and then 2014, Bumgarner doing what he did in Pittsburgh, and I was at that wild card game, and I was sitting with some of the players' wives, one of whom was Bumgarner's wife, and and it was like they had Pittsburgh, they said it was a blackout, and so everyone wore black for the Pirates, and it was so loud, and Bum was pitching amazingly, and then Crawford hit the grand slam, and you could hear a pin drop in that stadium, and that is one of my all-time favorite ballparks, by the way. It is amazing. And so, but then you could kind of feel the momentum shift, and we were able to go on, and but yeah, it also does show you it's one thing to get to the playoffs, and it's hard to get to the playoffs in baseball, but it's another thing, it's so hard to advance beyond. It's so much harder than some other sports, for sure. It's such a grind, and you just never know. One game play-in for the wild card, and you've got the best out of 5 for a divisional. Things can happen on a dime.
Yeah, and it speaks to that. I think it was the Ken Burns documentary about baseball that talked about the hitters you remember are the ones who get 1 out of every 3.
Right. Exactly. It's such a complicated game.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And especially in those playoff moments, like thinking back to 2010 with Cody Ross and and then the Crawford thing. It's like,
and the
you never know when
heroes,
these things.
Yeah, Connor Gillespie. When we,
I have that shirt, literally, Connor Gillespie.
Yeah, I mean,
after 2016,
you just never know who's going to step up, and that's what's, I think, so magical and unpredictable about the game. And and it also depends on what pitcher you're facing. Like, every game is different. It's not the same, unlike basketball where it's generally the same 5 or 6, 7 guys out there. It's one individual cannot influence a game unless you have a dominant pitcher, obviously. But generally speaking, it's really hard to have that type of global influence.
And it's going to be a different pitcher the next day.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the nature of the game.
Totally nature of the game. Yeah. Could be a lefty, could be a righty, and how you see. And so there's so many different calculations that have to go. And, obviously Boch is the master of that and trying to, to play those matchups. But, I mean, like in the game 4, we had the shift on and then the ball gets through, so it's like, you just never know. You could do one little thing here and there and one bad pitch or one good pitch. And so it's been incredible to watch the fan support, literally from when we were trying to save the team in 1992 and before that, obviously. And, now that the fans, obviously they get frustrated and they're really high expectations.
Don't listen to KMBR
but, yeah,
call
exactly.
shows. No offense to Marty Lurie, love him. But
Lurie or Murphy Mack or those guys, they all have opinions. But it shows the true passion of the fan base, and they're incredibly knowledgeable and they understand, the nuances of the game. We had an event out here on Saturday for our season ticket members where we had about 5,000 of them on the field post-game. Thank God we won that game. But we had all of our players out there serving beer and serving hot dogs and ice cream, and we did some interviews with them. And I think everyone had this really lovely post-game experience, kind of interacting with each other and really kind of showing the continuity and the cohesiveness of the whole Giants family.
Check back next week to hear from Kevin DeMattia, one of the owners of Bender's and Emperor Norton's Boozland. Music for this episode is by Joe Begale. Follow Storied San Francisco on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Go check out our store, where you can buy shirts, hats, and koozies that were designed and screen printed in San Francisco. The store is up on our website, storiedsf.com. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. Send comments and suggestions to storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.